What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and I'm here once again to give you the most comprehensive NBA player prop preview you are going to see today. Now, if it's your first time watching these videos, I do this every single night. I share my screen, we go through Outlier, I take you through all the key players, all the key matchups, looking at their form lines. I tell you what I like, and I tell you what I don't, and I do all this to give you all the information that you need to make the best bets possible. Now, it was 2 days ago, but our last video was an absolute banger. 6.33 units profit. We cashed in Joel Embiid's 3-point prop. Adebayo unders. Tobias Harris in the first quarter. Kelly Oubre points and rebounds. Tyler Hero over his assists. Jaime Jaquez over his points and assists. And Ayo Dosunmu over 13.5 points. And if you talk about our high value singles, we cashed Kelly Oubre 7+ rebounds. So we're going to get after it again. I've got a few players that I like, and there's two players that I'm going to share in this video that I can guarantee that nobody's going to be talking about. So if that sounds interesting, let's go. All right, so we're kicking it off with the Chicago Bulls versus the Miami Heat. Miami 1.5-point favorites in this one at home. Looking at the lineups, Alex Caruso, Ayo Dosunmu, Andre Drummond, Duncan Robinson, all game time decisions for the Miami Heat. Butler and Terry Rozier, they look like they're out for this game. So it's going to be a very close one, and close games means great opportunities for betting. Let's get straight into it. We'll start with these blokes from the Chicago Bulls. We'll start with DeMar DeRozan here. So my man's been playing quite well as of late. Starting with his points prop. His line's at 26.5 points. He's cashed this in 8 out of his last 10 games, which is pretty wild. In head-to-head matchups against Miami, he has only cashed in 2 out of his last 8, though. So they do a good job limiting DeRozan. He has been playing out of his mind. His volume is great. I feel like his points prop, maybe his points plus assists, going to be a very popular play. I do not love this. If you're looking at parlays and you want to take some safer bets, DeRozan for 20 points looks like a great one to add to your parlays, but I'm personally not loving it. So he's cashed 20 points in 7 of his last 8 against the Heat. But over his last 10 games, he's been an absolute beast. Up against Atlanta, though, people were expecting a big game for DeRozan. The money came in, the line kept moving up, and he only finished on 22 points. So this line at 26.5 is what it opened up at. It's moved up to 27.5. It's been bet down to 26.5. So it is moving up and down. So it's not clear on where the money is going. But yeah, I, for one, won't be touching DeMar DeRozan's points prop. Looking at his assist prop, it's at 5.5 minus 135. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10 games, and up against the Heat, 3 of his last 8. So his last 4 games, he's gone under. Now, if we jump into his rebound prop, that's at 4.5 minus 135, 6 of his last 10. And even in this, 4 out of his last 8 games against Miami, he's cashed in. So Miami have done a great job slowing him down. If we look at his PRA, 37.5. He's gone under this in 4 consecutive games against Miami. And if we look at his last 10, 6 out of his last 10. So these matchups against Miami, he does get very close to his line. So I feel like these lines today are very sharp. I wouldn't tell you to take the under on any, not telling you to take the over either. I think some alternate plays for DeRozan could be great because he is getting close, not always cashing those. So DeMar DeRozan, he's not my guy in this one. Next up, we're looking at Nikola Vucevic. Now, his points line in this game is at 17.5, and his last 4 games have been amazing. 20-plus points in his last 4 games. Cash is in 6 out of his last 10. He does have a difficult matchup here against Miami. Adebayo, they've allowed the 3rd fewest points to setters on the season. Nikola Vucevic, he's covered this line in 3 of 8 games against the Miami Heat. So he has had a difficult time against them, and it makes sense. But his recent form leading into this game has been excellent. Your boy's been getting busy. Now, if you think about the way that Nikola Vucevic scores his points and how it works, it's a lot of post up, a lot of pick and roll, and there's a small bit of it where he spots up. Now, unfortunately for him, the Miami Heat do a great job of defending the pick and roller, and they're also pretty good at defending the post. So it's not the ideal matchup for Vucevic, and I personally would be taking his points prop. I'm not saying he'll take the under because he's been playing very well, but despite his great form, his line's only at 17.5, and it's at 17.5 for a reason. Looking at his assist numbers, though, 2.5, 6 of his last 10. Has cashed out in his last 2 games against Miami, but prior to that, 6 consecutive games where he's gone under. Now, what do we see that's different? Potential assists, they do go up and down. Looking at his last 10, he's only getting 3.9 potential assists. So, with such low potential assist numbers, I'd probably lean to the under in this, but 2.5, man, you can get real lucky and hit those. So, not keen on that. Rebound wise, the matchup's not too difficult here. He's covered this in 4 out of his last 10, but up against Miami, very similar to his points line, has struggled only 3 of his last 8 games. So, again, what you're going to find in these players, a lot of these star players have very sharp lines. So you have to rely on more than just the numbers to get you the best picks. Find some YouTubers like myself who are willing to spend a lot of time and dive into this, and maybe this will help you out. Who knows? It might crash and burn today. But I'm not liking anything for Nikola Vucevic in this game. So DeMar, Vucevic, not interested. But what do I like? Surely I can find something that I do like from the Chicago Bulls team. I'm thinking about Ayo Dosunmu. So I did bet on him in that game against Atlanta. So we absolutely cashed that. I think his over was 13.5 points. He finished on 19. So pretty sweat-free in that game. For this one, his line is at 14.5 points. He's cashed this in 6 out of his last 10. Now, we don't know if he's going to play. He has had a bruised quad, but he had the bruised quad going into the Atlanta game, and he still played that one. Let me check his minutes real quick. He played 41 minutes in that game. So this is do or die, baby. So I can't see why he doesn't play. So I'm still willing to take a bet here on Ayo Dosunmu. 6 of his last 10. And then up against Miami Heat, he's only cashed this in 2 out of his last 8 games. So it hasn't been overly impressive. If we think about the matchup, it's not the worst one. Miami ranking 13th in points to shooting guards. I don't love his points prop. I think he can definitely get 10, not gonna lie, but the 14.5, I think that line is just about right. But if we're looking at his assist prop, 4.5's the line, plus money, only 2 of his last 10, and only 1 of his last 8 games against the Miami Heat. So a lot of minutes in that last game, 41, only had 5 potential assists. So I would lean to the under, but at minus 155, I don't think that's worth playing. So we move on. Looking at his rebound prop, 3.5's the line. He's cashed this in 2 of his last 10 games. And up against Miami Heat, he has cashed in his last 2, 8 and 4 rebounds. So you're getting plus money here for Dosunmu. Pretty good matchup. Miami Heat, 12th most rebounds to shooting guards on this season. But he's only hit this line of 3.5 in 29% of games this year. So there's not enough data to really drive that. Doesn't get to too many contested rebounds. So you're really looking for the ball to bounce his way. Now, I've gone through his points, assists, and rebounds. You can tell there's nothing that I'm really aroused by. So what am I betting on? I'm actually thinking I'm betting on his 3-point prop. So his line in this game is 1.5. He has cashed this in 6 out of his last 10, averaging 2.13 pointers made. He's hit this in 3 consecutive games. And in head-to-head matchups, he's cashed in 3 of his last 8, but he did cash in his last 2 games against the Miami Heat. Now, the one thing I like about this is volume. So, check this out. He's played the Miami Heat 4 times this season. In those games, 2 attempts, 1 attempt, 4 and 7. Early in the season, we had Zach LaVine in there. Obviously, Dosunmu didn't get as many minutes, so he only played 13 and 12 minutes. The last 2 games against Miami, 35 and 40 minutes. Those are the types of minutes I'd be expecting in this one. And in those games, 4 attempts and 7 attempts. Now, that last game against Miami didn't shoot very well. 2 from 7. Pretty poor percentage there, 29%. If we look at his last 10 games, Ayo Dosunmu shooting 50% from deep. So what we're looking at there is if he gets at least 4 shot attempts, it looks like we're making some money. Attempt 4 against Atlanta. The other thing I like is how this team matches up in terms of Dosunmu. So I don't know if you know about this about the Chicago Bulls, but they're not the best at defending the 3-point line. Where the Chicago Bulls, the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat, not the best. They're a great team, not going to lie. Our weak is to spot up shooting, and where they give up the most 3-pointers, or one of the most 3-pointers, is in the corner. And you know who loves to shoot from the corner? Ayo Dosunmu. Absolutely loves it. Dosunmu scores 40% of his points from spot-up shooting. He takes 14% of his shots from that right corner with the Miami Heat are weakest. So I think that it all matches up well. Hopefully he hits 2 3-pointers in that very corner. So I don't mind Dosunmu there. Over 1.5 3-pointers. The odds are pretty good for that. So who else do I like in this game, though? Where's my man Kobe? Where's Kobe White? Kobe White could be a popular play from a lot of the cappers out there. So let's check out Kobe. Now, his points prop, 20.5. He has cashed this in 4 out of his last 10. He just scored 42 points against the Atlanta Hawks. Up against Miami, he has cashed in his last 2 games against them, but only covering in 2 out of his last 8. He's another player who would have been severely impacted with Zach LaVine. Let me just double check this. Games without Zach Levine, and we can see he's versed the Miami Heat 3 times without Zach, and he's played quite well in those games. So his points prop, I don't love it to death. I don't hate it either, but I think we can find something better for him. Let's have a look at his assists. 4.5, 5 out of his last 10, and his last 2 games against Miami Heat. So I'm really focusing on those 2. That's where you see his extra minutes. 11 assists and then 5 assists as well against Miami. So the assist prop, I don't mind. He's got a great matchup here. The Heat allowed the 7th most assist to point guards on the season. And if we jump into his rebound prop, what do we see? He's only hit this in 2 out of his last 10. So his line's at 4.5, which is wild, right? 4.5 hasn't been getting even close to that. If you look at head-to-head matchups, last 2 games against Miami, 7 rebounds in both of those games. So what I'm thinking about playing in this one is his rebounds plus assists. Now, why? Last 2 games against Miami, absolutely murdered it in rebounds and assists. That's one thing that I like. Looking back at his last 10, he's only cashed this twice, but he does have a good matchup here. And when I see lines like this, it makes me feel like the books know something. Now, my man's going to get at least 40 minutes in this game. Kobe White's going to get 40 minutes. Desonmu and Caruso, they are somewhat injured. So someone like Kobe White could potentially play the whole damn game. So if he's on there, he's going to get more opportunities for rebounds and some assists. So this is a play I don't mind. I just need to dive into it a little bit further. His 3-point prop, if you guys are into, at 2.5. He's cashed in 4 out of his last 10. Look at this in head-to-head matches against Miami, though. My Lord. 7 consecutive games. Kobe White has cashed 3+ 3-pointers. 6 consecutive games. He's hit 4 of them. Now, in terms of the matchup, pretty good one. Miami allowed the 9th most 3-pointers made to point guards. This is bloody crazy. And in these games, he's averaging 8.5 attempts per game. In his last 10, he's only averaging 5.8, though. So his recent form's a little bit patchy, but his form against Miami is excellent. So at minus 135, I'm not too interested in playing it, but it's a very telling stat, right? Is it something about Miami that really gets him going? I'm not too sure. So, look, I'll tell you what it could be, actually, now I think about it. Miami have done a pretty good job of slowing DeRozan down in the past. So if DeRozan's been slowed down, next man up, it's going to be Kobe White. Because we know that Vucevic, he doesn't have a great matchup either. So it might be a game where Kobe White really tosses him up. But I'm going to add this to my shortlist, actually. I'm going to add it to my shortlist and see where we land with Kobe White. So I'm looking at his 3-point prop and his rebounds and assists. Now, before we get into the Miami Heat players, I just want to see if there's anybody else from the Bulls where there could be some interest. And I'm sorry to report that there isn't. All right, let's jump into the Miami Heat now. Let's start with Tyler Hero. So, Tyler Hero. His points prop, 25.5. No Terry, no Jimmy. A lot of people would be expecting a lot from Tyler Hero. So a lot of these graphs we're about to see for Tyler Hero are going to be bright red, I assume, because his lines are going to be bumped up. Now, what do I know? The Bulls don't allow many points at all to point guards. They've been very good at that all year. So Tyler Hero hasn't cashed this line very well, and he's never cashed this line against the Chicago Bulls. But with no Jimmy Butler in the lineup, it really does change things. So I already am leaning to the under. But if we look at his games without Jimmy, what do we see? 14 games without Jimmy this season. He's only hit this line 4 times. He's only averaging 21.5 points per game without Jimmy Butler. His line is at 25.5. Now, in head-to-head matches, played 1 game against the Bulls. This is back in 22, though. Scored 19 points without Jimmy. But we know, with Jimmy or not, he has struggled against the Chicago Bulls. And I honestly think there's a chance that he struggles again. So I already like the under in his points. But let's see what else we got. His 3-point prop is at 3.5. He's cashed this in 2 out of his last 10. And in head-to-head matches, he's gone under the last two games against Chicago. I wouldn't confidently take the under on that, but I would definitely lean that way. Let's have a look at his assist prop. This has moved up. So I did bet his assist prop against the Atlanta Hawks. I had him for 4.5 assists, and that was at plus money. We're now seeing the line at 6.5. He did have, not against the Hawks, against the 76ers. 6.5 plus money. Now, what do we see? The matchup's not too bad. In head-to-head matchups against Chicago, he's cashed this in 2 out of his last 4. So he definitely has the potential to cash this. I'm not sure if I'm willing to play it, though. If you look at his potential assists, he doesn't really dominate, averaging 8.9 potential assists. If we look at the games without Jimmy Butler in the lineup, what do we see? Tyler Hero, he's only cashed this line in 1 out of his last 10 games, averaging 4.7 potential assists without Jimmy. 7.8 potential assists, 4.7 actual assists. So this is another play where I'd probably lean to the under because his line's been lifted up and I think is a little bit too high. Now looking at his rebound prop, that is up and a half. He's cashed in 4 of his last 10, but he has rebounded well against the Bulls. 7 and 8 rebounds in his last 2 games against them. If we take a look at his rebounds without Jimmy to see if there's a difference, what do we got? 4.9 in his last 10. Without Jimmy, 5.3. So a slight improvement in his rebounding numbers without Jimmy. So if I was going to take a Tyler Hero bet, it might be his rebound prop over 5.5 boards. Matchup somewhat difficult, but I think he can get it done. So overall, so what was it? I don't like his points and his assists. So I might, because I'm not telling you to bet this. I'm just being transparent with what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of betting the under 31.5 points plus assists for Tyler Hero. So he has against the Chicago Bulls, and in his last 10 games, averaging 26.2 points and assists. And without Jimmy, he's averaging 0.7 points and assists. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm being ballsy or not, but keep this in mind. The projected points total for this game is only 205. So it's not going to be a fast-paced game, up and down. Both of these teams are somewhat slow anyway. The Miami Heat, the second slowest pace in the league, and the Chicago Bulls are the third slowest pace in the league. And without Jimmy, it might slow things down for them. Miami probably going to focus their offense more around Bam Adebayo. DeRozan slow as fuck, and so is Vucevic. So the Bulls might even play even slower. So there's probably not going to be a lot of opportunity for Tyler Hero in this game. It might not be the one for him. If we think about the way that Tyler Hero scores points and the way that the Chicago Bulls defend, how does he score? He scores a lot in the pick and roll as the ball handler. The Chicago Bulls are excellent at defending the pick and roll, especially the ball handler in that situation. The Bulls are weak. We know that they give up points to spot up shooting. Tyler Hero is going to be the dominant ball handler in this game. I don't believe he's going to have too many opportunities to spot up. He can score in the transition, but the Bulls don't allow too many of that. They don't turn the ball over much, and they play slow as hell. So I don't know if Tyler Hero is going to have enough opportunity to get his shots off. So, yeah, I think I might be willing to take the under here. Under 31.5 points and assists, but I'll be sure to research that a little bit more. Who else have we got in this game? Let's have a look at Bam Adebayo, actually. I think Bam's going to have a good game. Just saying. I'm thinking that. What do we have? His points prop, 21.5. Now, yes, he's gone under in 9 consecutive games. He's been absolutely trash. He's only hit this in 36% of games this season. And in head-to-head matchups, he's had a bit of success against the Bulls. 4 out of his last 6 games against them. Now, Bam's probably one of the players who sees a massive uplift without Jimmy. So check this out. These are his last 10 games without Jimmy Butler. He averages 22.3 points per game in those games. So we see a massive increase in his scoring. He's versus the Bulls once without Jimmy Butler. Yes, this was 2 years ago, but in that game, he scored 27 points with no Jimmy, 12 of 15. So he shot a very high percentage, but his points prop, 21.5. It's not too bad. Honestly, I think the line might just be outright. Looking at his assist line, that's 4.5. He's cashing 3 out of his last 10. Matchups, not too bad. And in head-to-head matchups, he's hit this half the time. He's averaging 4.5 assists against the Bulls. We put the same sauce on it, the Jimmy Butler sauce. We remove Jimmy Butler from the equation, and what do we see? 6 assists there up against the Bulls, and in his last 10 games, he's averaging 6 assists without Jimmy Butler. The line's only at 4.5. I like it already. Come on, Bam, let's go. Now, if we look at his rebound line, let's check it out. 11.5's the line. He's cashed this in 3 out of his last 10. He's only hit this in 2 out of his last 6 against the Bulls. We add some Jimmy Butler sauce on it. Take Jimmy out, and he averages 11.9 rebounds in his last 10 games without Jimmy Butler. Crazy. 5 out of his last 10. The worst game he had 9 boards. The only game against the Bulls where he didn't have Jimmy Butler, he had 12 rebounds in that game. So, look, the way that I'm thinking about it, I like his points, rebounds, and assists without Jimmy. So you can see here, he hasn't hit this in his last 10 games, right? But why the hell's the line so high? It's because there's no Jimbo. And without Jimbo, we know that Bam's about to finna go off. And What did we do? We also went through Tyler Hero, right? And we looked at Tyler Hero's numbers, and I don't like Tyler Hero's numbers. Now, check this out. These are his Bam Adebayo's last 10 games with Jimmy Butler out of the lineup, and he's cashed this in every single game. Now, what worries me is that this might be too good to be true, but I'm going to look into it anyway. I don't know if this is too obvious a play. If it's too obvious, sometimes it bites me in the ass. But I'll be looking at Bam's over in his PRA. The other play that I like with Bam in it is his first quarter points. Now, check this shit out. He's averaging 2.4 points per game in the first quarter over his last 10 games. Not very impressive, right? But now if we add some Jimmy Butler sauce to it, what do we see? He's averaging 6.9 points per game in the first quarter without Jimmy in his last 10. And in his last 6 games, he's covered this line in every single one of them. Now, I'm not guaranteed to take this. It is plus money, though. I do like that. But I need to look into his volume. What's the volume like? What are his attempts like? Because if he's only taking 3 to 4 shots, I probably don't take this. But if he's taking 5 to 6 shots without Jimmy in the lineup in that first quarter, it might be something I can fuck around with. But I do like him to have a big game today. If I notice that this is a really popular play on the board, I probably won't take it. But we'll see. I don't know how many people use an outlier out there. So what else do I like? In this game, we've got Jaime Jaquez Jr. So he's in the starting lineup in this game with no Jimmy Butler. And what do we see? His line's at 13.5. He's cashed this in 3 straight, 3 out of his last 10. And he's murdered the Bulls. 3 consecutive games he's cashed this line up against the Bulls. Looking at the matchup, it's not too bad as well. We're going to have to add some Jimmy Butler sauce to this as well because Jimmy be fucking up everybody's lines. And what do we see? Jaquez averaging 14.7 points per game in his last 10 without Jimmy Butler. 5 of his last 10. But keeping in mind, he has cashed his last 3 games as well, and that was with Jimmy in the lineup. So he's in good form leading into this game. He's shown that he is capable. He's hit this line in 64% of games without Jimmy Butler this season, and he's yet to play the Chicago Bulls without Jimmy. So I don't hate this for Jaquez. I'll put that on my list of leans, and we'll see what we find. His assists, his line is at 2.5 or 3. He's only cashed this in 30% of games this year. He has cashed this in 3 consecutive games against the Bulls, though. Apply the Jimmy Butler sauce to it, and what do we see? He's averaging 2.6, cashing in 3 out of his last 10. So his assist numbers, not the greatest, not going to lie, but the matchup is a good one. He's averaging 5.8 potential assists in these games, though, which isn't too bad. It just comes down to who's taking those shots. Patty Mills in the starting lineup. Could it be him? Nikola Jovic, more than capable of hitting some 3-pointers. So Jaime Jaquez assists, I don't hate them. And if we look at his rebound line, what do we see? 1 out of his last 10 games. And look, all of these lines are going to look shit because he was playing off the bench. So let's just go straight to adding the Jimmy Butler sauce. And what do we see? 5.1 as an average in his last 10 games. His line's at 4.5 at plus money. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10 games. The matchup against the Bulls, defending the 3, though, is a difficult one. They allow the 3rd fewest rebounds to small forwards on the season. So I think I might take a Jaquez play. I don't know what it is. It could be his PRA. It could be his points and assists or his points plus rebounds. I'm not sure. But there's Jaime Jaquez. His lines aren't too bad. I don't mind them at all. Now, what else do I have in store for you? Just double checking these players. We've got Nikola Jovic. I don't think I have a play on him, but look at his lines. His line's at 7.5, 6 out of his last 10. I've applied the Jimmy Butler sauce on him before, and it was like this. You don't know what the hell's going to happen. So I didn't absolutely love it to death. If we look at his 3-point prop, 5 out of his last 10 games. What do we see? 4 out of his last 10 without Jimmy. So there's nothing crazy happening there with Nikola Jovic. We're going to look at, let's have a look at Caleb Martin. So I know there's a few people that are banking on Caleb Martin to carry, to be an absolute nut trucker in this game. Let's see. Now, he's inconsistent as hell. So if you're looking at form lines, you're not going to find anything here for Caleb Martin because his minutes are up and down. Has played good against the Bulls in the last 2 games, though. 17 points in both of those games against the Bulls. He played 38 and 37 minutes in those games, and he was attempting 11 shots per game. So, yeah, he's got the good history against the Bulls. Outside of that, we know he's going to get more opportunity with no Jimmy Butler. He'll probably get a lot of game time because he's defending DeMar DeRozan as well. That could be enough to keep him on the court. So Caleb Martin points, that could be a good play. But now I'm going to show you the play that I feel like nobody's going to be talking about. The play that nobody's going to be talking about that I'm most likely going to bet is on this man, Haywood Highsmith. Now, his points prop, some people might talk about that, right? He's cashed this in 6 of his last 10, averaging 7.8 points per game. If we apply the Jimmy Butler source to Highsmith, what do we see? He's averaging 9.7, 7 out of his last 10. So it's a pretty good hit rate. So that might be enough for some people to talk about it and bet it, right? So his points prop is a lean of mine at the moment, but a play that is probably a little bit more adventurous. It's got much better odds. And this is the one that no one's going to talk about, I believe. It's this 3-pointers made prop for Haywood Highsmith. Now, the over 1.5 3-pointers plus 180 odds. So we're talking a lot of plus money. So the Bulls, they do not defend the 3-point line very well at all. He's only cashed this in 4 out of his last 10 games, which is not very impressive. If you look at his attempts, he's averaging 3.6 attempts per game. Now, if we add some Jimmy Butler sauce to it, what do we see? Haywood Highsmith, check this out. So suddenly, he's cashed this in 5 of his last 10, averaging 2 3-pointers made without Jimmy. His 3-point attempts go up to 4.1. He shoots them 49% from the field. So I give this a 50% chance at hitting. And we're getting excellent odds for something that I view as a 50% chance. What do we have? He shoots 50% from the field. He averages 4 3-point attempts, right? In his last 10 games, he's hit this 5 times, and he's averaging 2 3-pointers made per game. All of that tells me there's a pretty good 50% chance here. We're flipping a coin. We also know the Chicago Bulls do not defend the 3-point line at all. They allow the second most 3-pointers made this season. And then if we think about the matchup, where do the Bulls allow these 3-pointers? Well, they allow a lot of them above the break, of course. But where the Bulls are the absolute worst are defending the corners. They allow the most 3-pointers made in both corners. Now, Haywood Highsmith doesn't score a lot of points, right? But he does score 50% of his points come from spot-up shooting. Now, him shooting from the corners account for almost 35% of his shots. Another 30% of his shots come from above the break, right? So 60% of his shots, I think, are from 3-point land with the extra minutes without Jimmy, with the 50% hit rate bullshit I've been talking about. Haywood Highsmith to get 2 3-pointers. Honestly, if I saw this play every day, I would take it every play. And I promise you I'd be up by the end of the season. So I do like that. I'm also considering getting frisky with it and taking over 2.5. That's plus 700. And what you can see is he's cashed that in 4 out of his last 5 games without Jimmy Butler. So that might be a big risk. I'll put a small bit on it. But Haywood Highsmith Jr., 3-point prop. You heard it here first. Let me know in the comment section if anybody else is playing this, because I doubt anybody would, because you have to be fucking crazy. Outside of that, let's jump into the next game because I'm getting a little bit too excited in this one. It's the Sacramento Kings versus the New Orleans Pelicans. We know Malik Monk is still out. Jonas Valanciunas is still out of it. What am I talking about? Jonas Valanciunas is not out. He's the first player I wanted to look at. Zion Williamson is out for this game. Sacramento Kings, 1.5-point favorites despite being on the road. I think the Pelicans beat them 4 times in a row this season. So Zion definitely moving some lines around, but let's talk about it. I want to talk about Jonas Valanciunas. Now, this is one of those players where I feel like it's going to be one of the most obvious ones on the board. Everybody's going to be taking it, and I can see why, but I also support the decision. Now, Jonas, his points line, 11.5 points. The matchup against the Kings is a difficult one. They allow the 5th fewest points to centers on the season. And if we have a look at head-to-head data, what do we see? He's cashed this in 6 out of his last 7 games against the Kings. He played against the Kings in all 4 games this season. He scored 15, 18, 15, and 13 points against Domantas Sabonis. That's white-on-white crime that we're seeing here. He's shit against everybody else, but a minute he comes up against this bloke, he comes to get him. So he's got great form against the Kings. You cannot deny it. He's averaging 27 minutes and less than 10 shots per game, but he's been cashing the shit out of this line. So the Lakers, he got 20 minutes, and I feel like he'll probably get about 20 minutes in this game. Up against the Kings, we know that he can get this number in about 20 minutes, so I don't mind the points prop. I think that's going to be an excellent play, and a lot of people are going to be backing it, and I get it, and I can see why. His rebound prop, some people might get in his points plus rebounds. He did rebound very well against the Lakers. He did shoot poorly, 1 from 7 from the field. That might be enough to influence people. The matchup for rebounds, according to the data, is pretty good against the Kings. Let's take a look. He's only hit this in 2 out of his last 10. And in head-to-head matchups, he's cashed this in 6 out of his last 7 against the Sacramento Kings. So a lot of it makes sense. I get it. The rebound line looks great. The points line looks great too. Now we're going to look at his assist line because honestly, that looks pretty good too. His line's at 1.5, 4 out of his last 10. He's got a good matchup on paper here against the Kings. And in head-to-head matchups, he's cashed this in 5 out of his last 7. So what do you do with this information? I'm not too sure. His PRA looks pretty good. Check this out. This is his PRA against the Sacramento Kings, 23.5. He's cashed it in 7 consecutive games, averaging 28.5 PRA. This season, in 4 games, 28, 29, 28, and 26 points, rebounds, and assists for Jonas Valanciunas. And in his last 10, he's only covered this 3 times, but don't worry about that. This is his white on white crime matchup against Sabonis. I think it'll be a popular play. I personally like both the PRA and the points prop, so I'll need to decide which one I like more, and then I'll probably end up betting that. So that's Jonas Valanciunas, popular play on the board. Who else do we have? I know CJ McCollum. His name's been thrown around. As soon as Zion was ruled out, everyone was thinking CJ's up to no good. But let's check him out. He's cashed his point sign in 8 of his last 10 games. A lot of this was without Brandon Ingram, and CJ was going off in head-to-head matchups against the Kings. Scored 30-plus points in his last 2 games against them this season. So absolutely killed them in those games. But now we've got to add on some different filters, and it's a Zion Williamson sprinkle. So let's sprinkle some of this shit on Zion and see what we come up with. CJ McCollum without Zion Williamson is inconsistent as hell. He's played 8 games without Zion this season. He's covered this line 3 times, averaging 21.6 points per game without Zion. And what do we see? He played 1 game against the Kings this season without Zion. He did score 30 points, though, so that must be promising. 2 out of his last 4. I personally don't love it. What I have seen some people get around is his 3-point market. 8 of his last 10. What's he done it in? Last 2 games against the Kings, 7 and 9 3-pointers. If we remove Zion from the equation, what do we see? We can see that he's 1 of 4 against the Kings without Zion. In his last 10 games without Zion, he's cashing 2.7. So if you're somebody who's taking CJ's prop, you're putting a lot of stock into his form in the last 2 games against the Sacramento Kings. Whereas, look, with Zion, you've got someone who's going to penetrate, who's going to draw in the defense and create space outside. They don't have that anymore. I have a feeling CJ is going to be the man driving to the rim. I don't see anybody else doing it, but Brandon Ingram definitely ain't going to be doing it. But I'm personally not loving any CJ's props here to score some points. You might feel otherwise. But if we look at his assist prop, that's cash in 4 out of his last 10 games. He has hit that in 2 of his last 6 against the Kings. If we put some Zion sprinkles on it, what do we see? We see that CJ averaging 4.3 assists without Zion in the lineup, 2 out of his last 10. And in the 4 games against Sacramento without Zion in the lineup, he's gone under in every single one of them. So I might be willing to risk an under in his assists. Maybe his points plus assists, but yeah, there is potential for him to go off scoring wise. But even if he does go off scoring wise, it's not going to impact the assists. So taking the under in assists, I think it's a brave play, a little bit of a sweaty play, but I don't hate it. The matchup, yeah, it kind of checks out. CJ assists, I can take the under on that. And if we look at his boards, that line's at 4.5, 5 out of his last 10 games, 2 of his last 6 without the Kings. Zion, not a massive rebounder, but let's see what happens to the numbers. Last 2 games without Zion against the Kings, he's cashed his rebounds line. And in his last 10, he's 6 times, averaging rebounds per game. So his rebounds play, I can get around that too. Him to go over his boards is not bad. Honestly, it's not bad. Under in assists, over on boards, points, I couldn't tell you. I lean to the under for CJ. 3-pointers, I don't love that. I feel like the way he plays is not going to give him too many 3-point opportunities. Next up, Brandon Ingram. His points line, 19.5 points. Cashing in only 2 of his last 10 games. He's had great success against the Kings in the past, 5 out of his last 6. I think it's his 3rd game back now from injury. Minutes, he's played 2 games since coming back from injury. Minutes still quite low. Willie Green did say that he practiced quite well. He'll get a lot more minutes. So Brandon Ingram, it's quite a difficult read because we know his form against the Kings is really good. We also know that his form without Zion is very good. Check this out. 23.5 points per game without Zion Williamson. So he plays better without Zion, and he loves to play the Sacramento Kings. But we don't know how many minutes he's going to play. He hasn't looked great since he's come back from injury. So personally, no bets on Brandon Ingram for me. Looking at his assist prop though, 5.5, 4 out of his last 10, and has a lot of success against the Kings. Cash in his last 2 games against them. His assists without Zion, 3 consecutive games against the Kings, he's gone over. And in his last 10 games, he's gone over 7 times without Zion Williamson. So his assist prop looks good, but again, I don't know how many minutes we're going to get from him. So rebounds, 5.5 is his line. 3 of his last 10 and only 2 of his last 6 against the Kings. A little bit of Zion sprinkles. What do we got? 1 out of his last 3 and 5 of his last 10. So nothing major going on there with Brandon Ingram. Who else do we have from this New Orleans Pelicans lineup? Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy, he really stepped up with Brandon Ingram out of the lineup. Can he do the same without Zion? I doubt it because the numbers tell me he can't. Now, he is back in the starting lineup. So he's cashed this in 4 out of his last 10 games. He's had a bit of success against the Kings. 4 out of his last 6 games, he's covered this line. If we have a look at how he goes without Zion in the lineup, he's cashed this in 3 out of 4 games against the Sacramento Kings. Played them once this year without Zion, and he went under in that game with 11 points. In his last 10 games, he's cashed without Zion 6 out of his last 10. 7 games without Zion this season, he's cashed this line 3 times. So, yeah, not loving what I'm seeing here from Trey Murphy on the points front. If we think about the play style, Trey Murphy does score a lot of points from spot-up shooting, though, especially above the break. And the Kings, they're somewhat decent at defending that certain area of the floor. He does score a lot in transition, but the Kings don't allow too much of that. So I think the line is pretty good. I think he gets close to that line. Can't tell you whether it's over or under, though. It's not very obvious to me. The other play you might consider is his rebound line. So that line is at 6.5. He's cashed that in 5 out of his last 10. So you can see as soon as Brandon Ingram came back, his rebound numbers absolutely tanked. In terms of the matchup, the Kings allow the fewest rebounds to small forwards on the season. Trey Murphy has also gone under this in 6 consecutive games against the Kings. If we have a look at his rebound numbers without Zion, what do we see? Well, we know against the Kings, not great. Last 10 games without Zion, we just look at the season actually. 7 games without Zion Williamson, he's averaging 5.5 rebounds. He's only gone over this twice. So, yeah, for his rebound line, I would definitely consider looking at the under there. Minus 108. It's not the worst play in the world. Let me check that out. I'm going to put that on my short list. I'll research that before I put my final picks in. Also, if you're interested in following my final picks, you'll see them in the pinned comment. Just be sure to watch the video until the end. And when you're done watching the video, check the pinned comment and you'll see my final bets. All right, whilst we're on the Pellies, let's talk about Herb Jones. Now, I've got one lean on Herb Jones, so I'll get through the shit that I don't like real quick. His points line's at 11.5, 4 out of his last 10, 3 out of his last 8. Now, I don't love this. This doesn't even change without Zion. He's not barely impacted. That's a lie. 7 out of his last 10 games without Zion, he's cashed in this season, averaging 12.7 points per game. But given his lines at 11.5, averaging 12.7, yeah, you might be able to play that. In head-to-head matches without Zion, though, he's cashed in 1 of his last 4 against the Sacramento Kings. So I don't love his points prop to death. A lot of his recent form without Zion's pretty good, but not enough for me to take it. The play that I do like for Herb Jones, though, is his 3-pointers made. So check this out. He's only cashed this in 4 of his last 10. He has in his last 3, though. Herb Jones, head-to-head matchups against the Kings, he's cashed this in 2 out of his last 8. So that's not overly impressive either. If we have a look at his games without Zion, what do we see? 1 of 4 games against the Kings, not overly impressive, pretty low attempts. And if we look at his last 10 games without Zion, he's only cashed in 3 out of his last 10, 2.9 attempts per game. So none of this is looking great either. The only reason I would consider taking this play for Herb Jones is purely because Herb Jones, almost 30% of his shots are taken in the corner, 3-pointers. And the way that the Kings play defense, they don't defend the threes awfully well. And there's one particular corner where they really struggle and they leave a lot of three-pointers out there, and it just happens to be where Herb Jones takes the majority of his shots. So I think the right side corner 3 for Herb Jones, he's going to get some opportunities there. I think there's a chance that he cashes the 2. It is a plus money play as well, which is the only reason why I'm considering it. So I'll look into it a little bit further. If I can get great odds, might be something that I choose to take. But yeah, Herb Jones, not loving too much outside of his 3-point prop. All right, let's get into these Sacramento Kings. We'll start with the big dogs first. Domantas Sabonis. His points line is 18.5. He's cashed this in 2 out of his last 10 games. The matchup with the Pels is a good one, though. They allow the 10th most points of centers on the season. Unfortunately, this white-on-white crime is a thing because Domantas Sabonis, he's only cashed this line 3 out of 8 games against the Pelicans, averaging 17.6 points per game. So he hasn't been a beast against them. The matchup's good, but his recent form sucks, and his form against the Pelicans sucks too. So not loving his points prop. I'm not saying to take the over because he gets very close to it. So that I'm not too sure of. His assist prop is at 8.5. He's cashed in 4 out of his last 10. Once again, it's a great matchup. The Pels, 4th most assists to centers on the season. So that should give us green lights, right? White on white crime, baby. In head-to-head matchups, if you're looking at assists, he's only covered this in 3 of 8 games against the Pelicans, 1 of 4 games this season. So not loving what we're seeing here for Sabonis. Hasn't done very well against the Pelicans despite the great matchup. What I have seen in some circles, after I show you his rebounds, is one of the more popular players. Oh, look at this. White on white crime continues. So his rebound line's at 13.5. He's only hit this 3 times in his last 10 games. And once again, it's a great matchup against the Pels. But against the Pels, he's gone under in 8 consecutive games, averaging 10.7 rebounds per game. White on white crime. Jonas Valanciunas all over Domantas Sabonis. Another dead body. Now, one of the popular plays that I see going around at the moment involves an under in his rebounds. I think it's his under in his rebounds plus assists. Now, he has cashed the under. Where's the under? Here it is. Under 22.5 rebounds plus assists. 6 out of his last 8 games against the Pelicans, he's gone under. The 2 games where he went over, he just happened to get a triple-double in, right? In his last 10, he's gone under 8 out of his last 10. So, yeah, I don't mind both of these plays. Rebound-wise, he's only hit in 3 of his last 10, but he's gone under it in all of his games against the Pellies. Keeping in mind, though, Domantas Sabonis probably going to get a little bit more minutes than he has been. I'd say he gets about 36 to 40 minutes in this game, given it's do or die. I don't mind the rebounds plus assists unders here for Domantas Sabonis, but I'm going to investigate that a little bit further. What worries me is that this could be a popular play, and you know how I feel about popular plays. I don't like taking them because too often they blow up in my face. If you think about the last set of games that were on, what were the most popular plays on the board? It was Tyrese points plus assists, and it was Trae Young's over 10.5 assists. And both of those plays lost. I only took one of them, but they both lost. So the most popular plays on the board, not always the best ones, unfortunately. So we'll see. But that's a bonus for you. Let's get to my man Aaron Fox. His points line is 27.5 in this game. My lord. Matchup against the Pels, somewhat difficult. He's cashed this line in 4 of his last 10. We look at head-to-head matchups. He's only hit this in 2 out of his last 6. So he does have potential, but hasn't done it very well against them. If we think about the way that De'Aaron Fox likes to score points, what do we know? A lot of shit in the pick and roll. And you know what? Pelicans, number 1 team at defending the pick and roll ball handler. So good luck. He scores in transition. Pels, not too bad in transition either. He scores a lot by the free throw line. Pelicans, not big at fouling, so they don't allow too many free throws. Where the Pelicans are probably soft is in spot-up shooting. And De'Aaron Fox, not doing too much of that. So capable, I think on volume alone, he's definitely capable of covering this points line. I'm not game enough to take the under or the over, to be honest. If we look at his assist line, that's at 6.5 plus money. I think this was at 5.5 before, so it may have moved. Now he's cashed this in 4 out of his last 10, and in head-to-head matchups, 2 out of his last 6 against the Pellies. So I'm not loving his assist prop here. Potential assists, he's getting 12.2 potential assists per game. You need 7 assists, though, from 12 potential assists, which means you'll need the Sacramento Kings to come out. So, yeah, I'm not loving that for De'Aaron Fox. Rebound-wise, line's at 5.5. He's only cashed in 3 out of his last 10, and he's gone under in 6 consecutive games against the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans also allow the fewest rebounds to point guards on the season. So I would lean to the under on this for De'Aaron Fox, but at minus 139, I'm not fucking around with that. So yeah, I think he goes under, but maybe if you're playing on one of those apps that where you just got to pick over or under, this could be a good play for you. But if you're betting singles, there's a lot of juice in this play, which means less profit in your pocket. So yeah, not loving that for D Fox. Let's have a quick look at his 3 pointers prop, actually. 2.5's the line, minus 160. So there you go. A little bit more juice. 6 out of his last 10, but he's only hit this in one of his last 6 against the Pels. So again, I'm not loving too much for Sabonis, apart from that under on his boards. Not loving too much for De'Aaron Fox either. The good thing is, when you see numbers like that and trends like that, it means somebody else can step the fuck up, right? So if those two don't play well and score a lot of points, who can we probably expect? Keegan Murray, his points line, 18.5 points in this game. It is plus money as well. He's cashed in 6 of his last 10. He just lit up the Golden State Warriors for 32 points. And the matchup with the Pels, somewhat difficult. 6 fewest points allowed to power forwards on the season. Keegan Murray did score 19 points in his last game against the Pelicans, 2 out of his last 7. So if you think about Keegan Murray, how does Keegan Murray like to score his points? Well, he's a spot-up shooter, right? 30% of his points come from spot-up shooting, which is the weakest point for the New Orleans Pelicans. So I think there's a good chance here that Keegan Murray probably becomes a key contributor in this game. Now, he shoots a lot of his threes from above the break, though. And the Pels, they're not too bad at defending that. But I think about who's the matchup going to be. Keegan Murray will most likely have Trey Murphy on him, or maybe Brandon Ingram on him. Either way, very long range defenders. Keegan Murray, I think the points prop, it could be there. It could be the 3-point prop, actually. So we'll take a look at both. I don't hate this points prop, though. At plus money, I might be able to entertain it. If we look at his 3-pointers made, 3.5's the line. It's plus money. He's cashed in 5 out of his last 10. The Pels, they do allow a lot of 3-pointers. The 7th most 3-pointers in the league. And if you look at head-to-heads, he's cashed this line in 2 of the 4 games he's played against the Pelicans this year. I don't mind that. 7.1 average attempts in his last 10 games. He's taking 10 3-pointers a game, shooting 39%, and the line's at 3.5, which means if he can average what he has been averaging over his last 10, this bet cashes and it's plus money. He's up against a team that allows a lot of 3-pointers, and he's done it to them 50% of the time this season. We know that Sabonis, we don't love his points prop. We know that De'Aaron Fox, he might have his challenges as well. We also know that no Malik Monk. So does it just make sense that Keegan Murray can get off some threes here? I don't mind it. You know what? I'm adding to my short list. Keegan Murray, 3-pointers. Hopefully we can get a good price for it. But yeah, let's look at his rebounds real quick. Rebounds for Keegan Murray. 4 of his last 10 games, averaging 6.4 boards. Matchups, not too bad, but he's gone under in 7 consecutive games against the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, a lot of that could be because of Zion, but I know that Zion didn't play in all of these games. Despite that, Keegan Murray has gone under in every single one. So the rebound prop, not something I want to entertain. Points, I don't hate. 3-pointers, I think I like those a little bit better based on the numbers. But who else is there? Harrison Barnes. Now, I think he's capable of a big game. He's just very hard to predict, old Harrison Barnes. I say old, but I think Harrison Barnes and I might be the same age. Now, Harrison Barnes, his line's at 13.5. He's cashed this in 4 out of his last 10, which is not great. But in head-to-head matchups, he's had a bit of success. 5 out of his last 8 games against them, he's cashed this line. His last game against the Pels, he scored 22 points. So pretty juicy effort there for Harrison Barnes. Now, Harrison Barnes, very similar to Keegan Murray, actually. He scores a majority of his points, spotting up, catch and shoot threes, backdoor cuts to the rim. 35% of Harrison Barnes' points come off spot-up shooting, and we know that's where the Pelicans are the weakest. I don't think I can bring myself to bet on this Harrison Barnes prop, but I do think it has a lot of potential to cash. I think Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, even Keon Ellis, I think one of those guys is going to have a big game. At the moment, I do like Keegan Murray a bit better than Harrison Barnes, but let's jump into Keon Ellis because I have hit quite a few bets on him as of late. Now, he's cashed this line of 10.5 in 4 of his last 5 games. Check that out. Man's been a beast. Now, let's see how many games has he played without Malik Monk. Without Malik Monk in the lineup, Malik Monk hasn't played those last 10. Keon Ellis, his minutes are a little bit inconsistent, though. And I think the risk here for me is Keon Ellis, very small man. A lot bigger than me, but still a small man nonetheless. This New Orleans Pelicans, they got a lot of size. And Keon Ellis, Feisty defender, most likely gets a CJ McCollum matchup, which could keep him on the court. But B.I. Murphy Jones, way too much size for him. And a lot of them might have too much size for De'Aaron Fox. So I don't know if Keon Ellis is going to get the run time that I would expect to see. But despite that, his form's been pretty good as of late. Last game against the Pels, he only scored 5 points in 23 minutes, 2 from 5 from the field. So, yeah, I think this has potential, but at 10.5, that's too many points for my liking. So I'm not a big fan of Keon Ellis in this one. Checking to see if there's someone else I may have missed. I think we've covered all the main ones, to be honest. All right, let's get to the banger play. So I did promise you guys that there are 2 plays that I don't think anybody else is going to be betting on. I did share the Haywood Highsmith 3-pointers. I'm not saying that's going to cash, but I do like it. Not going to lie. The play in this game that I don't think anybody else is going to bet on, I'm going to take a play on Dyson Daniels. Now, Dyson Daniels he plays a beer for the Pels. He's also Australian. I might be a little bit biased in that, but his points line here is at 4.5, and it's for plus money. He's averaging 6.6 points in his last 10 games. Now, the thing about the playoffs, right? You'll see starting players, star players, they're going to get more minutes, more opportunity given the importance of the game. The bench rotations, they shift a little bit. It's usually an 8-man rotation they play, so they don't go as deep into the bench, right? Which is why you're going to catch players like Dyson Daniels, like Haywood Highsmith, with lower lines than they'd probably normally get. But in both scenarios, these players have opportunity given the injuries that have happened. Now, Dyson Daniels is a guard. He's a big point guard, right? Zion being out, it may not impact his minutes. There are more minutes to go around nonetheless. Dyson Daniels, if Grand Theft Alvarado, not effective in his minutes, Dyson Daniels is going to be the next man up. His points line here is at 4.5, which I think is an absolute steal. I love it to death. Firstly, he's hit it 6 times in his last 10, which is pretty good. Up against the Kings, check this out. Last 2 games against the Kings, he scored 14 and 10 points in those games. I think Zion played in those games, to be honest. And he still got, Zion played in one, Brandon Ingram played in one. So they were both missing in one of those games. Regardless, he got it done. So let me just check that out. Without Zion, yeah, check that out. Last 2 games without Zion, 12 and 14 points against the Sacramento Kings. In those games, 12 minutes, scored 12 points. 29 minutes, scored 14 points. Now, I personally am not expecting 29 minutes for Dyson Daniels in this game. Over his last 10, he's averaging 28 minutes per game. Even if he gets 15 to 20 minutes, 4.5 points, definitely something that the man can cash, right? So I do like his 4.5 points. Now, if we want to talk about high-value singles, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about taking him over 10 points, which I'm looking at 10 points and 3 rebounds, to be honest. And I'm getting plus 1,000 odds for that. So that's something I'm considering at the moment. His hit rate for 10 is not too bad given the odds that are on offer. His hit rate against the Sacramento Kings, he's hit it 3 times in 7 career games. I think it might be worth a play. So Dyson Daniels over in his points prop, Haywood Highsmith over his 3-point prop. Those are the 2 plays that nobody's going to be talking about, and I am. They might be the 2 plays that blow up in my face and do not cash, but this is sports betting, guys. You got to take some risks sometimes. And on a 2-game slate like this, I'm going to be taking those risks. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. We're close to an hour once again. I don't even check the clock in this one. I just talk for a random amount of time, and the video always seems to go a similar length. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. If you haven't checked out Outlier yet, you have to. It's what I showcase on every video. It's what I use to find these absolute banger plays. So check out Outlier, free 7-day free trial in the description below. If you want to become a Daft Previews All-Star and support the channel, you know what to do. Click all those buttons down below. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
To the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to you live from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.